What's up YouTube, Demi here with the long-awaited Flying Purple People Slayer update. This is my level 100 Slayer that I've had for a long time now, but since Melee's been reworked like crazy in 3.7 and everything's been buffed to hell, this is an Impale Cyclone variant of that character. The forum guide linked in the description will have updates for anything in the future if I miss something or if like the league changes or the patch changes, you know. The forum guide is kept up to date to the current patch, but this is just going to be like a generic guide showcase type thing. So let's go ahead and run a quick Minotaur here, so you can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, Slayer's been reworked, Cyclone is insanely beautiful now. Everything about Melee just feels great. And it's just really fun. Like, the new Slayer rework means that you can get even more damage out of it. You're like exceptionally good against killing bosses. I don't even currently have the Leech Ascendancy anymore. Like, I've decided to drop it in favor of just getting more damage, because damage is nice. But yeah, everything just feels better. Your movement skills are a lot faster. Your Cyclone is now a channel. I have Ice Crash variants. I have Impale Cyclone, which is what this is. This is the Impale Cyclone variant. Earthquake, and then like a generic Cyclone. If you want to use any other melee skill, this character will work for literally any two-handed melee skill, especially if it has area in it, because you have a fair amount of area scaling as well. Yeah, it's just like a great all-around character. It's not the highest DPS in the world. It's good enough to complete all content very easily, but when it comes to like, oh, I want to get a 20 million DPS character, this will not be that, most likely. Until I maybe make a crit variant, which might be coming in the future, but let's go ahead and just get to this Guardian map. Or Minotaur, or whatever. Hello, friend, come here. Just drop your totem, and then you go. And he's dead. And I know a lot of you are concerned that this character is using a mirror tier weapon, which right now I'm not. I just debated you real hard, because that entire clear is within its serious disfavor. If you were to actually invest in your character even further than this, you could use Bane, which is, you know, 1039 DPS right now. But that clear was within its serious disfavor, so for those of you that are worried about mirror tier gear, I wouldn't be. You don't need it for this type of character. It's great, but you don't need it. And now my gem links are all messed up for some reason. Whatever, okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about the Ascendancy and your choices here. We are a duelist that's ascended into a Slayer. Depending on what you prefer, I go for Headsman first. This gives you more damage if you killed recently and more damage against unique enemies. It's a great boss killing thing. It also gives you immunity to reflected physical damage. And if you're playing the Impale variant, you're basically pure phase with some chaos, so that's good. I also have Bane of Legends after that. This is your Cruel Lab take. It gives you 20% Cull instead of Cull being the normal 10%. It's 20%. It's ridiculous. Like third phase Uber Lab, third phase Shaper, you just die instantly because you have 20% Cull. You also get 20% increased attack speed and 20% movement speed whenever you kill a unique or rare or an enemy. That is not the same thing as Onslaught, so it actually stacks on top of Onslaught, which you can get from your Axe node. So that just gives you 40% movement speed with Onslaught. It's disgusting. And then for Merc Lab, you can go for, if you want pure damage, you take Impact for the damage and melee range AoE per enemy killed recently. Like, this is a great clear speed buff and damage buff for Cyclone. For every other melee skill, it's still a good amount of AoE. But if you don't want that, you can just take the Leech Node instead. This gives you 20% of overkill damage, reduces life. That means if you hit an enemy and they're at like 1k health, you hit them for 11k, you then overkilled them for 10k, so you have to leech 2,000 of that damage. You also can't be stunned while leeching, and you're immune to bleeding while leeching, which is all the time if you're hitting something, right? And if you use Brutal Fervor after that, if you don't want to take this damage node, you can take Brutal Fervor. It's really just preference. I've opted out of it this league. Previously, I always had Brutal Fervor, but I don't anymore. But it effectively gives you life leech effects are not removed at full life, which means that instead of your leech stopping when you fill up, like a life pot stops when you fill up, it just goes up past that. So when you take damage, you'll start healing again because you've taken damage, but you still have that leech shield, you know? It's really, really good defensively. But if you just want pure damage, then take Impact. So the skill tree, again, may change based on whatever patch this is, but this is the current Impale variant. The other skill trees are linked in the forum guide below. So you're gonna start out with a bunch of attack speed and some life nodes, some two-handed nodes and some more life nodes. And then, depending if you want to go Impale or not, I would recommend skipping the Impale and Blood nodes for a bit until you get to like later on. But you're gonna grab like melee weapon range, fortify stuff, more two-handed nodes, more life nodes. All of this other stuff is like AoE slash Impale, so we'll come back to that. You're gonna head up into here, grab all your other Scion life wheel, more life nodes. You're gonna grab Resolute Technique so that we can't miss. This is a non-crit build, but it gives you a 100% chance to hit, which means you don't have to worry about accuracy at all. Pretty good. More life nodes, more two-handed nodes, depending on which type of weapon you want to use. This character works with all of the weapon types. If you're doing swords, you just like path this way, instead of this way, right? So you can just go 1-2 instead of 1-2, and then you can grab the sword wheel instead of the axe wheel. Or if you want to go maces and you want to use shockwave, stuff like that, you can take the mace wheel. If you wanted to, you could even go staves. It's up here. It's a little bit awkward because staves are usually crit, but you can do that as well. We are currently axes though, and then jewel sockets we'll go over in a second. Then you head up into the Templar wheel area for more life nodes, more jewel sockets, and then eventually when you get to end game, you want to grab all your impale stuff. These nodes combined with these nodes give us a 100% chance to impale with Dread Banner, so we have 100% impale all the time. We'll talk about impale in a second, and then after that you're going to grab your weapon range nodes. So we got brinkmanship for the weapon range and splitting strike for the axe melee range as well. If you're swords, it might be kind of awkward to grab sword stuff over here. There's mace weapon range nodes as well. It's just kind of dependent on what weapon type you choose, so you can just edit the tree slightly to get those. As for jewel sockets, you're basically going to want to stack life and then a bunch of damage mods. So every single jewel you have should have life on it, and then there's a billion modifiers that'll apply to your damage. So things like global physical damage, melee damage, area damage, increased damage, attack speed, attack and cast speed, attack speed with two-handed weapons, damage with two-handed weapons, damage with axes or swords or maces, or again, whatever you choose. It's just like, get 3 property jewels, they should be really cheap. 3 prop jewels are always really cheap, just prioritize life plus 2 damage. And then get the 3rd damage modifier later on when you can afford it. But all of my jewels are life triple damage, or, you know, double attack speed damage, something like that, just because damage. As for the impale stuff, so the way impale works is it's a little confusing. It's basically, it takes your melee physical damage hit, whatever it might be, so I deal 13 to 23k physical damage. It takes 10% of that damage and it stores it. And then the next hit applies that damage and it stacks 5 times, so after your 5th hit, you're dealing that damage 50% more every hit. And then if you have Impale effect, it scales that 50% more all the way up to like 100% more. I think I have 112% Impale effect, so I'm getting something around the range of 104 to 112% more physical damage. Only physical damage. It does not scale off of your elemental or chaos damage, so this is the pure Fizz Impale variant, right? And Impale is ridiculously good, because before this league, we didn't really have a way of playing pure Fizz that made sense. But with the Impale multiplier, and if you have a 100% chance to Impale, it becomes very, very reliable, which means that it's a great addition to any melee build. I'm gonna try to fix my gem links real quick. All right, anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the gearing aspect of things. So as I showed you earlier, you can use this favor, you can use a rare axe. There's a billion weapons you can use. Starting at endgame, you're gonna wanna go for something that's at least 300 PDPS, like unique such as Hesmanas or Invictas, stuff like that. Any of those unique two-handed weapons that have around 400 DPS, Doomsour, oh god, Kondo's Pride, all of those will work. And then eventually you can get into something like a Disfavor or a Starforge would be great, or you can get into an extremely high PDPS rare like Painbane. But it's just the more you get on your weapon, the more you could scale into like hilarious amounts of DPS. As for the rest of your gear, it's basically just all life resist rares with damage on it. So helmet, life resist, if you need some dex, if you need some int, whatever, grab it there. Gloves, life resist, if you can get some damage, some flat fizz, some attack speed, you know, that sort of stuff, that's all great as well. Boots, same thing. Movement speed, if you're playing Cyclone. If you're not playing Cyclone, then don't worry about the movement speed, because you're just going to be jumping around all the time anyway with Leap Slam, so you don't have to worry about that. It makes gearing for your boot slot a lot cheaper if you don't buy a movement speed pair of boots. If you can grab Onslaught boots, great. This will help you with boss fighting since you won't have the Onslaught on kill proc from your axes. You can get permanent Onslaught boots in Standard. They are Legacy now in Synthesis League, I believe. Let's see, chest piece, same thing, life resist. If you can get some physical damage taken as fire, if you can get an extra 7th link as a maim support, great amount of free damage there. This is basically just a purely defensive chest for me though. Rings, if you're playing the Impale Fizz version, you're gonna want steel rings with like flat fizz, life, attack speed, resist, stats, whatever you need, right? These are basically the same. If you're playing the generic versions with elemental damage, then grab some wed on top of that, but elemental damage with attack skill, sorry, not wed. Otherwise, you just get life resist. If you can craft minimum frenzy charges everywhere, great. If you're playing the pure fizz variant, this is an amulet that'll work great for you. It's just pure fizz, attack speed, leech modifier gives you more total like leech rate, so it's just really, really good. And then I got some non-chaos extra chaos for free damage. If you're playing the elemental variant, you're gonna want to look for something that looks like this. This is like extra fizz is extra fire, non-chaos is chaos, in all res, you know, stuff like that. It's basically the same, it just got a little bit more damage because of the extra fire damage. And no fizz because you're not playing Impale. As for your, oops, sorry, wrong buttons. As for your belt slot, if you can get an Elder belt that has this life recovery rate modifier on it, that's a multiplier to how fast you leech again. Otherwise, just get a bunch of damage mods. Melee damage during any flask effect, increased damage, life, physical damage works here as well. You can't get an Elder Stygian because they are, again, standard only, except for I believe some dropped in Legion on a bug. But you can get an Elder Leather Belt, that'll do just fine, or an Elder Strength-based belt, or an Elder Rustic Sash. Those are all great. If you have an Elder Belt, you can throw in a Stygian, sorry, you can throw in a jewel like this with Fizz, Life, Unholy Might on kill. Unholy Might gives you 30% of Fizz as extra chaos, which is quite a lot of damage. As for your helm enchants and stuff, whatever your skill you're using, I don't even have the right helm enchant. You could get Cyclone damage helm enchant, you could get Lacerate damage, you could get Earthquake duration, you could get Ice Crash physical as extra cold, like any of the skills that you're playing, just get the relevant helm enchant for that. Glove enchant, you're going to want to get Commandment of Fury or of Spite. Fury is an attack whenever you hit something. It throws out your weapon in an arc in front of you and basically one-shots things. Commandment of Spite does kind of the same thing. When you get hit, it throws your weapons out and then they leave chilled ground. So it's defensive or offensive, depending whichever one you prefer. Fury is the offensive one. Boot enchant, you're going to want to get the attack and cast speed if you killed recently modifier, because we don't really need anything else. We got plenty of leech from the tree. We got Volpack leech. Like, if you want to get, I guess movement speed could be good if you want to play just Cyclone if you haven't been hit recently, but if you're playing the Impale version, you just want this. If you're playing the Ellie version and doing boss fighting, potentially 10% pen if you haven't killed recently will be good, but I just go over this because it makes you overall faster. Flask stuff. So the only real DPS flask you care about early on would be the Adziri's Promise. These are usually like a chaos. You grab this, it gives you 20% or more as extra chaos damage. It's a lot of free damage basically, and some leech and chaos res, which doesn't hurt. If later on, if you can afford it, grab a Lion's Roar. This gives you more melee physical during effect and knockback, so it makes them take more damage from their bleeds and keeps them out of melee range, especially if you're playing Cyclone. You don't want things to be right up next to you. This keeps them away from you, so that they just, you know, die on the edge of the Cyclone. Other flasks, you're going to use a Basalt Flask. If you don't have Cannot Be Frozen on your boots somewhere, then get a Freeze Flask here. If you're playing Cyclone, get a Quicksilver Flask. If you're not playing Cyclone, you can use something like a Sin's Rebirth for the Unholy Might to be more reliable than your Abyssal Jewel, or you can just use something like a Sulfur Flask for that 40% damage and some life regen. If you're running Labyrinth, I recommend carrying a Writhing Jar. This allows you to spawn worms, and if you kill that worm with that 20% overkill leech, the worms only have 1 life, so whatever you hit them for, you're going to leech 20% of that damage as life. It's hugely important for like lab traps and stuff, especially if you have this for the life leech effects are not rooted full life. If you want to run lab, I definitely recommend taking this node and using a worm jar. It's pretty good. And then after that, if you can afford it, get a Taste of Hate. These actually should be pretty cheap. They might be cheaper than Lion Roars now, but these give you defensively, you take less fizz damage because it's transferring into cold damage, which then goes against your cold res. It's just like a good defensive buff, and it gives you 30% fizz extra cold, which is another little offensive buff. You know, a little bit extra damage, doesn't hurt anybody. As for bandits, you're going to want to kill all, because we just want the skill points. And as for pantheons, I have Soul of Solaris maxed and Soul of Growthcoal maxed for the fizz mitigation, less attack speed modifiers, and then if we get crit, we don't take crit damage for 4 seconds, as well as getting a chance to, like, you know, take less area damage from hits, which is just good overall defensive mechanics. But yeah, this character is like a workhorse. It's always been around. Two-handed RT melee has always been around, Resolute Technique melee, and it just gets stronger every patch. This melee rework made it ridiculously good, ridiculously comfortable to play. Cyclone just feels great with or without a mirror tier weapon, you know? It's just like, if you want to play two-handed RT melee, you want to be like that beef stick that just beats things up, then you can play something like this. And it's really fun. It's got a lot of room for improvement. You can get like insane amount of damage out of it if you really invest. If you go the Impale route, I think I have something like 5 million DPS, Shaper DPS, on an RT build, which is pretty good. Last league I think I only had like 1 or 2 mil Shaper DPS, so it's gotten a lot better. But yeah, there's other variants in the forum guide. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down there or in the forum guide. I'm sure they might have been answered already. The forum guide has incredibly detailed like gear stat priorities, leveling progression for weapons, all of that good stuff is down there as well. There's also leveling seal trees linked in the forum guides. And the paste bins, I'm sorry. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I want to talk about. So if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, comment if you haven't, you know, something like that. Let me know what to do next. And if you want to support me in what I do, my merch store is linked below, my Patreon's linked below. You can actually get Pain Bane merch now with this beautiful axe on it. You can get t-shirts and sweaters and whatnot, so if you want to grab one of those, I would greatly appreciate it. But hope you guys are enjoying Legion League. I'm really enjoying this character, even though I'm not supposed to be playing it because I'm in Legion. Supposed to be grinding Legion, but you know. Hopefully you guys have fun with builds like this. They're just really good. Even with just a disfavor, or even with just like a Hezmonas or something, it'll be great. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and that'll be Demi out.